Let's be honest, for a lot of companies, the cloud bill feels like a financial black hole. Money goes in, but you're not quite sure where it all goes. Well, today, we're going to light it up. We're going to walk through the FinOps journey, a path that takes you from confusing bills to having total control over your cloud spend. So, does this whole scene feel a little too familiar? You move to the cloud for all that amazing agility and speed, but then the bill arrives. And, oof, it's a total shock. It really is a black box, right? You know you're spending the money, but trying to understand where it went and why it went there feels next to impossible. And this slide right here, this shows you exactly why this is such a modern problem. See, back in the old on-premise days, IT costs were pretty simple. They were fixed capital expenses. Finance would buy a server, they knew exactly what it cost, and that was that. But the cloud, well, it completely flipped the script. Now, all your costs are variable, they're happening in real time, and they're often being driven by individual engineers spinning things up. So that old school central control, it's just gone.
And that means you can't manage this new reality with old methods. It just doesn't work. This huge shift demands a completely new way of operating, a whole new culture that brings financial accountability directly into the cloud. And that new practice, that new culture, well, that's what we call FinOps.
So, where does a journey like this actually begin? Well, it starts in what we call the crawl phase. This is square one. This is where organizations are really just beginning to get their arms around the chaos of their new cloud costs. So, forecasting in this phase, it is incredibly basic. We're talking about teams just looking at last month's bill and pretty much assuming this month's is going to be the same. This is what we call naive forecasting, and, it's called that for a very good reason. It totally ignores how dynamic and constantly changing the cloud really is. The crawl phase is really defined by manual, often pretty frantic work. I mean, picture it. People wrestling with massive spreadsheets, pulling data by hand, and usually only doing a forecast when someone from finance sends an urgent, panicked email. There's almost zero visibility into what's actually driving all the spending.
And the result of all that? Massive inaccuracy. In the crawl phase, it is totally normal for forecasts to be off by more than 20%. Just imagine telling your CFO that your budget forecast might be off by a fifth. That is a really tough conversation, and believe me, it happens all the time at this stage.
And this quote right here from someone at a large insurance company, it just hits the nail on the head. Everyone just assumed that business teams would know how to estimate their cloud needs when they moved over. But the painful reality, they don't. And that one single incorrect assumption is what drives that huge forecast variance we just talked about. But of course, organizations don't stay in that chaotic phase forever. The next stage in the journey is the walk phase, and this is where things start to get better. This is where you start building repeatable processes and moving away from reactive firefighting to more proactive management.
Now, in the walk phase, forecasting gets a whole lot smarter. You move way beyond that simple, naive method. You start using trend-based forecasting, where you're looking at historical data to project future growth. And then, and this is the big one, you mature to driver-based forecasting. This is where you start connecting your cloud spend to actual business KPIs, things like user growth or new product launches.
This quote from Paul Saffo just perfectly captures the huge mindset shift that happens in the walk phase. A forecast isn't about having a crystal ball to predict the future anymore. It's about taking meaningful action right now. It becomes this powerful tool that tells you what decisions you need to make today to control your costs tomorrow.
And you can see the results right here. They're tangible. As you can see in this chart, just moving from crawl to walk has a dramatic effect. That forecast variance that was over 20%, it drops to below 15%, and usually it gets even lower than that. You're starting to build real predictability and trust. So we've crawled, we've walked. What's the final destination? Well, that is the run phase. This is the goal. This is a truly mature FinOps practice that's automated, that's collaborative, and that gives the whole organization complete control over its cloud finances.
I think the absolute best way to think about the run phase is with this analogy. Your dashboard becomes the cockpit of an airplane. You are no longer flying blind. You have all the instruments, all the real-time data, and all the controls you need to navigate safely and efficiently to where you want to go.
So what kind of instruments are we talking about in this cockpit? Well, here's a key one: reservation coverage. This metric tracks how much of your cloud usage is covered by long-term discounts like reserved instances or savings plans.
A high number, like the 85% we're showing here, means the company is being really strategic about prepaying for capacity to get the absolute best discounts.
And those cockpit dashboards, they are incredibly powerful. They don't just show you the total spend. No, they show you unit cost metrics, things like cost per customer. They've got real-time anomaly detection that can catch cost spikes the second they happen, and they can drill down from that high-level view all the way to a single specific resource that's driving up costs. This matrix right here perfectly summarizes the entire journey. Just look at the evolution. Your tooling goes from manual spreadsheets to full automation. Your forecast variance drops from a shocking 20% all the way down to under 5%. I mean, it is a complete transformation in your level of control and visibility.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about tools, dashboards, and processes. But what is the real secret? What is the key to successfully moving from that crawl phase all the way to run?
Here it is. The most advanced, most expensive dashboard in the world won't save you a single penny if your people aren't working together. The true engine that powers a successful FinOps practice isn't technology, it's collaboration.
In fact, this is so important. It is the #1 principle of FinOps. Teams must collaborate. Engineering can't just operate in its own silo, separate from finance. Product teams have to understand the cost implications of the features they build. This principle forces everyone to look at the same data, the same source of truth, and share responsibility for the value they're getting from the cloud.
So, we'll leave you with this one question to think about. Is your organization just passively paying the cloud bill every month? Or are you actively having the conversation to manage the cloud like the strategic asset it is? Answering that question will tell you exactly where you are on your FinOps journey. Thanks for joining us.